If I told you to picture an older person from a TV show or a movie, there's a good chance that one of these faces came to your mind. While there may seem like a wide variety of seniors on screen, only about 11% of characters in 2010's movies were above the age of 60. Film plays an important role in the way we understand the perspective of others. Unfortunately, when the windows into their lives are fogged up by cinematic and cultural bias, we become susceptible to misunderstanding groups of people. I sat down with Professor Sally Chivers, director of the Trent Center of Aging and Society, to take a closer look at how the media impacts older citizens.
And I do think that novels in general that form, and there are a few in the Canadian tradition, hold the potential for a richer way of understanding old age. The problem is, not many people read novels, right? They watch a lot more TV, they're on social media, they watch film. Other patterns in film are more reductive.
On screen, older adults are often reduced to being very dependent on their families, sometimes even being painted as a burden. This is exemplified in the film Still Alice, when Alice is diagnosed with dementia.
As she's being depicted as having dementia, it's still tapping into a broader cultural fear that that's what old age is the kind of losing of the mind, and in that particular story, a kind of desire then to get rid of yourself so that your husband can have his career.
This film, and many others like it, perpetrate the idea that society views old age and older adults as burdens, only a cost and something to deal with.
It also becomes something that older adults internalize. And I've noticed this as I've moved from more analyzing of text type of research to more interview-based research with seniors. It's astonishing how many people use that same language, so that it's not just discourse that's in the media. I can't pinpoint where it's coming from when someone says it to me in the moment. And it's usually quite a heartbreaking thing to hear, so it's difficult to navigate. But this idea of not wanting to be a burden, right? And the different ways that people are setting up their lives so as not to be a burden, as this motivating factor. So you think, you're entering, say your 60s, so you're starting to plan maybe for retirement in a kind of normative trajectory, and then your motivating factor is, how do I not burden people? That's not very inspiring.
Unfortunately, it's not just within these narratives that damage can be done to our perceptions of aging. The portrayal of the characters themselves also has a large impact on and often reaffirms the differences between society's view of aging males and aging females.
One of the differences I've written about before, I used the example of Harrison Ford and Melanie Griffith. And so Harrison Ford, and I'm not going to remember his exact age at the time, it wasn't the most recent Indiana Jones film, it was the one before that. Maybe he was in his 60s, maybe in his 70s. And he insisted on doing his own stunts, right? So not only was he continuing in this role that he'd had in his youth, but he was like, I'm going to be the one, like, wielding the lasso. Like, I'm so virile and fit and still able to do this. And he also had input into the screenplay, and he insisted that his age be mentioned and that it be a factor in how he came across as the kind of later Indiana Jones. Whereas Melanie Griffith has more or less disappeared from the screen in her 50s, and in a set of interviews that I found, was kind of thought she had to because of how she looked compared to how she used to look.
This discrepancy in our views of aging for each gender is further reflected in advertising.
Anti-aging cream ads, the actresses are usually like 20, right? It's like, this is probably not geared for you yet, right? And this kind of, so I think that is a really good point, and this idea that a little bit of gray hair maybe makes men look distinguished, but makes women look like they're not going to have the value that they should have, right? By that I mean societally pressure towards having a value tied with beauty.
If we shift our points of view and focus on accountable filmmaking, we can use media for good.
Film is a way that we can help people immerse in other ways of being, other ways of doing things, other ways of imagining later life. And as well, just infiltrating these other messages that we've been talking about in other parts today, right? So that we can have our own ways of thinking about age, resistant ways of thinking about later life, radical views of old age out there in the atmosphere alongside the kinds of cosmetic ads and hair dye ads that you were mentioning earlier.
Next time you turn on the television or start your next Netflix binge, pay attention to how age is portrayed on screen. Try to separate what you see within the frame from what you see around you. Take a minute to acknowledge how the media may have shaped the image that you hold of old age. In doing so, you can help to take the power away from constructed and overly biased narratives and give power over image back to older people themselves.